The verse of the day is Romans 8:28, and it says, "And we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose for them." We've all heard this one so many times. God uses everything for good. But I think it's important to note that today's verse is actually only referring to those who believe and follow Jesus. The prerequisite to having all things work together for good is believing in Jesus. It says, "We know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God." Sorry for everyone who doesn't. But that's not to say you're not invited, because you absolutely are invited. If you want to ever make that decision to love God or to believe in him or to change your life, you can be included in today's verse. You can live a life where God uses everything for good. He uses your lowest moments for good, because those are really the moments where we see God show up the most. You might be like, well, that's kind of mean that God would disclude everyone and only choose the ones that love him back. But if you think about it, if you don't allow God to be the leader of your life, because we all have free will, he can't take over. If you don't choose to follow Jesus or accept him into your heart, he can't use everything for good because you aren't giving him an opening to. That would be like someone knocking on your door and you didn't open it, and so you broke in and started rearranging their house because you thought they needed to redecorate because they didn't have style and they didn't ask and didn't invite you. That's such a random example, but we have free will. So the only way God can use everything for good in your life is if you've opened the door to him and you want him to lead your life. Now, you might be someone who's like, well, how the heck is God using my parent passing away for good? And I wouldn't say that that's a good thing. Losing a loved one is never a good thing. That's painful and traumatic and so difficult. But the only thing I can think of in terms of losing a loved one is God is able to take you at your most broken and show you who he is in the midst of that broken place, in the midst of having severe pain. And a lot of times it's in those low moments that we see God show up and make our heart whole again, and see God meet that need, that open our eyes to the reality of who he is, or open our eyes to new layers of who he is, and sometimes jumpstart our faith if we have fallen away, or just help us see how powerful God really is and what he's capable of, even in the midst of deep grief and deep pain. I've seen this verse show up so many times in my life. In every low, rock bottom place, I've been able to see who God is because I was in that place. Most often when we are at our lowest and we're desperate, that's when we seek God. And we cry out to him and we're like, Lord, save me. Or if there is a God, save me. And the reason why God uses all of our trauma and weakness for good is because he's able to actually flip it upside down and use it as our testimony to give God all the glory, to reveal who he is. I lived through a very traumatic divorce with my parents and even my stepmom and my dad. And if it weren't for both of those traumatic situations, I wouldn't know that God could actually step in and be a parent to me. I wouldn't know that he could actually make my heart whole, separate from the pain that I've experienced from parents. If it weren't for me being severely depressed and seeing him set me free, I wouldn't know that he could set me free from that. And all of those painful, horrible things, they're not good. But what God can do with them is good. How he can change them is good. How it can become a part of my story is good. How it's actually helped me go to him for everything is good. One funny example is my mom and I got in a fight a couple years ago. We were living together, so you know how that is when you live with your parents. There was just extra tension, and I remember I was in the shower and I had this overwhelming sense of, you're being such a brat. And I had just like this conviction come over me of, oh, I'm in the wrong, based off of a fight that we had had. And I'm actually being so bratty. And in that moment, it was God just highlighting a part. Because I didn't feel shame. It was just like, oh, shoot, I am being a brat. Like, I need to go apologize. Conviction is always linked with hope and a game plan to move forward. So it's not who you are. It's just God being like, hey, let's not do this. Let's do this to fix it and move forward in a better way. So I had this knowing that I shouldn't have said things that I did. And so I went to her and I apologized. And it was in me going to her and apologizing that actually made us stronger because of the fight. So if the fight never would have happened, we wouldn't have had an opportunity to have healthy conflict resolution. And healthy conflict resolution actually builds more trust and more unity and more love and connection. So God can use an argument and a fight for good, because when you run to God and you listen to the conviction God gives you, you're able to follow his plan, which is love, redemption, owning your part, going to the person that you wronged and trying to seek reconciliation. Then God's able to use it for good because the relationship got stronger. You were able to be like, oh, cool, I'm listening to conviction. Lord, thank you for convicting me. Any good father will discipline their children, which is why it's a good thing when you feel conviction, because that means you are growing and progressing, and God cares about you and wants you to do better and not cause pain to others and love well. When you hold on to the promise of a verse like today, that God uses everything for good, it should help disarm pressure. When we make choices, there's wisdom in praying and in wanting confirmation and making sure that you're being mindful in what God wants you to do. But God also is doing it with you, and there's something in you having a choice. The more you grow with God, the more you're going to be more clear about making your decisions. And so by you choosing, and if you choose in faith that this is what you think God is wanting you to do, he honors that, even if it may not be the right choice, and he can still use it for good and use it as a way to get you to a new destination if need be. Today's verse doesn't mean that you're going to have all good things and it's always going to go well for you. It means that in the midst of hard days and pain and trauma and difficult moments and anxiety and worry and making decisions and the hard moments in life, God uses everything, that nothing is void. Everything we do holds purpose and God can use. So it's supposed to help disarm the pressure, disarm the, oh shoot, what if I make the wrong decision? Oh shoot, what if I mess up? God can use your mess ups. God can use your wrong decisions. God is God. God is sovereign. Today should be a comforting reminder that anything you're going through in your life, God can use. You may not see it right now, but maybe ask him, Lord, how are you going to use this for good? And trust that he uses every decision that you make with him and is helping you make those decisions. Okay?